My name is Aria Bennett, and the last time I ate dinner at my parents' table, my father told me I was no longer welcome in his house. The words didn't arrive in a shout. They came in a calm, surgical tone, the kind that cuts deeper because it doesn't tremble. We were seated beneath the chandelier my mother polished every Sunday, crystal droplets scattering warm light over porcelain plates and linen napkins. A table set for perfection. A family that valued appearance more than breath. My mother, Evelyn Bennett, had arranged the meal exactly as she always did. Roast chicken carved precisely. Rosemary potatoes lined in neat rows. Water glasses filled to identical levels. Order was her religion. Silence her offering. My father, Richard Bennett, sat at the head of the table like a monarch who ruled over a kingdom of expectations. He owned a chain of upscale grocery stores across northern New Jersey. Reputation was his currency, image his inheritance, and Aria Bennett was supposed to be the next polished piece in his display window. Tonight, I had decided to break the glass. I had rehearsed the words all afternoon, whispered them to myself while staring at the bathroom mirror, palms pressed to the cool porcelain sink. I am pregnant, not dramatic, not apologetic, just truth. But truth is never simple in a house built on illusion. My fork trembled slightly as I pushed a piece of chicken across my plate. I could feel my heartbeat behind my ribs, tapping like a spoon against glass. My father noticed. He always noticed weakness. Are you ill? He asked without looking up. No, I said. My voice came out softer than I wanted. I cleared my throat. I need to tell you something. My mother paused mid-chew. Not surprised, just alert. Like a bird sensing a storm, I placed my hands on the table so they wouldn't shake. I'm pregnant, the sentence landed. In the room like a stone dropped into still water, ripples, silence, then the slow tightening of my father's jaw. He set his fork down carefully, too carefully. By whom? He asked. Not are you okay? Not how far along? Not what do you need? Just by whom? I swallowed. Evan. The name of the man I had loved. The man who had sworn we would figure it out together. The man who had stopped answering his phone 3 days ago. My father leaned back in his chair, studying me the way he examined bruised produce in his stores. You are supposed to start your internship at Laurent Culinary Institute next month, he said. I paid the deposit. I still want to go, I said quickly. I can manage both. No, he cut in. You will not walk into that school unmarried and pregnant. Do you understand what that does to the Bennett name? There it was. Not concern, not disappointment, calculation. My mother's eyes flickered toward me for the briefest second. I searched them for rescue, warmth, something. She looked back to her plate, silence chosen. Again, I felt something inside me stiffen. Not courage, not defiance, just clarity. I'm keeping the baby, I said. The words were quiet, but they shifted the air. My father's chair scraped back. He stood, tall and precise, like a man preparing to deliver a verdict. Then you will do it without my support. His voice was steady, cold, complete. You will not raise a child under my roof out of wedlock. You will not carry my surname into public disgrace. You will not remain in this house. I stared at him, waiting for someone to laugh, to say this was a test, a threat that would soften. But he didn't blink, and my mother still studied her potatoes. I stood slowly. I am your daughter, I said. My father's expression did not change. You are a complication I will not entertain. The sentence slid across the table like a blade. I felt tears rising not from sadness, but from something sharper. Recognition. In this house, love was conditional, performance-based, revocable, and tonight, it had been revoked. My father glanced at the clock on the wall. You have 1 hour to gather your things, he said. Take what you can carry. Leave your key on the counter. The same tone he used to fire employees. Efficient, clean, unemotional. My mother finally looked at me then. Her eyes glossy, her lips pressed thin. She said nothing. Not I'm sorry. Not I love you. Not please stay. Nothing. And in that nothing, I understood everything. Upstairs, my bedroom looked smaller than it ever had. Posters of chefs. Stacks of culinary textbooks. A childhood desk where I had once piped frosting roses until my wrists ached. The room where I had dreamed of opening my own restaurant. One day, I grabbed a suitcase. Then, another. I packed without folding. Clothes, shoes, books, toiletries. The ultrasound photo folded in my wallet. A wooden spoon my grandmother once gave me before she passed. 22 years of life reduced to fabric and paper. Downstairs, a game show laugh track floated through the house. My father had turned on the television. My mother sat beside him. As if nothing had happened. As if I had never existed. When the hour ended, I carried my suitcases to the front door. No one came to see me off. No one said goodbye. I set my key on the marble counter where my father wanted it. The metal made a soft sound against stone. Final, I opened the door. Cold night air rushed in. Sharp, honest, unforgiving. I stepped outside, and for the first time in my life, the world did not belong to my father. It belonged to uncertainty. To fear. To me. I placed my suitcases in the trunk of my car. My hands rested on my belly. Not yet visible, but real, undeniable. I won't fail you, I whispered to the life inside me. Even if I have no idea how to survive. I closed the trunk, sat behind the wheel, and drove away from the only home I had ever known. Without looking back, I drove for almost an hour. Before I realized I had no destination, the roads blurred under streetlights, yellow lines stretching like uncertain futures. My suitcases rattled in the trunk with every turn. The ultrasound photo in my wallet felt heavier than the car itself. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot just before midnight. The same chain my father owned, Bennett's Market, his name glowing in white letters above the entrance, like a reminder of exactly who I no longer belonged to. I shut off the engine. Silence settled around me, thick and unfamiliar. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. Evan still hadn't responded. My fingers hovered over his contact. I called again, straight to voicemail. I left no message this time. There was nothing left to say that didn't feel like begging. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, and that's when the shaking started. Not loud sobbing, not dramatic collapse, just quiet tremors running through my hands, my shoulders, my breath. I was 22 years old, pregnant, disowned, alone, and there was no plan. I slept in the car that night, curled in the back seat with my coat as a blanket. The parking lot lights never turned off. Their glow seeped through the windows, washing everything in artificial safety. In the morning, I walked inside and bought a bottle of water and a plain bagel. My father's employees nodded politely. None of them recognized me. Or maybe they did, and chose not to. Either way, I left before the shame could settle. I found a room to rent in Newark, threw a handwritten flyer taped to a laundromat wall. Room for rent, weekly rate, no questions. The house smelled like old cooking oil and damp carpets. The hallway light flickered. My room contained a mattress, a chair, and a window that barely opened, but it had a lock, and for the first time since leaving home, that lock belonged to me. Money became a clock that never stopped ticking. I had some savings from part-time work during college. Not much. Enough for maybe 3 months if I ate very little. So I found a job washing dishes in a diner. The owner, Sal, didn't ask about my past, only whether I could show up on time and work hard. I said yes. He handed me an apron and pointed toward a mountain of plates, hot water, soap, food scraps, steam, noise. It was honest work. And exhausting. By the end of the first week, my hands were raw and red, but I had money in my pocket. Not enough, but something. At night, I studied culinary textbooks. Anyway, I refused to let my dream die just because my life had collapsed. I fell asleep with my hand on my stomach every night, whispering the same promise. I'm still here. And I'm not giving up. Evan finally texted me 2 weeks later. We need to talk. My heart pounded like a fist inside my chest. I gave him an address near his apartment. I wore my cleanest clothes. I tried to tame my hair. I tried to look like someone who hadn't slept in a car recently. He arrived late. Of course, he did. He sat across from me at a caf table, avoiding my eyes. He talked about pressure, about timing, about how he wasn't ready for this responsibility, about how his parents wouldn't understand, about how his career was just taking off. Then he said the sentence that snapped something cleanly inside me. I think it's better if you handle this on your own. Handle this, not our child, not our future. This, like a spill. He didn't want to clean. I stood up. My legs shook, but my voice didn't. You promised me a future, I said. You don't get to walk away from the consequence of your own promises. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was answer enough. I left the caf without finishing my drink. I never called him again, and he never called me. Months passed. My belly grew. My shifts grew longer. My sleep grew shorter. I found a second job cleaning offices at night, vacuuming corporate carpets while executives slept in homes they didn't worry about losing. Some nights I cried quietly into my pillow. Most nights I didn't. Crying wasted energy I needed to survive. Most nights I didn't. Crying wasted energy I needed to survive. At 6 months pregnant, my body finally protested. I fainted in the diner. Sal called an ambulance. The doctor scolded me gently, told me I needed rest, nutrition, stability. I laughed at the absurdity. Rest costs money. Nutrition costs money. Stability costs money. So I quit the night cleaning job, kept washing dishes, applied for assistance, learned to stretch groceries into meals that felt like alchemy: rice, beans, eggs, cheap vegetables, endless repetition. Hunger became familiar. But I never let my baby go hungry. Even before she was born, the delivery room was quiet. No family in waiting chairs. No father pacing floors. No flowers delivered. Just me, a nurse, a doctor, bright lights, pain, breath, then a cry, sharp, alive, demanding space in the world. They placed her in my arms, a tiny face, a wrinkled forehead, a fist wrapped around my finger with astonishing strength. I named her Lena, light, because that's what she was. The nurse asked if family was coming. I said they were out of town. It was easier than explaining. Abandonment to a stranger. Back in my rented room, I held Lena against my chest and looked at her sleeping face. I will never leave you, I whispered. No matter how hard this gets. No matter how tired I am. No matter how scared. Her breath was warm against my skin, real, present, unconditional. And in that moment, I understood something vital. I had been discarded, but she was chosen. Every day. By the time Lena was 6 months old, I had learned that hunger can be both a curse and a compass. The curse was obvious. Empty cabinets, bills stacked like threats on my counter, shoes with worn soles, a body that moved through exhaustion like a machine running on fumes. But the compass, that was unexpected, because every time I stepped into a kitchen, something inside me woke up. The diner where I washed dishes had a small, forgotten prep station in the back. A single cutting board, a dull knife, a tired microwave. Nothing special. But during slow hours, when the plates stopped coming and Sal stepped outside to smoke, I started experimenting. I sliced vegetables with care, practiced seasoning rice, learned how heat changed flavor, how patience transformed cheap ingredients into something that felt almost luxurious. The first time I made a proper meal for myself and Lena: garlic rice, sauteed cabbage, a perfectly fried egg. I cried into my plate, not because it tasted extraordinary, but because it tasted like control. Sal noticed. He watched me one night as I stood over the prep station after closing, cooking something that smelled too good for a staff meal. He crossed his arms and said, "You ever cook before?" I wiped my hands nervously on my apron. "I was supposed to go to culinary school," I said. Before everything happened, he nodded once. No pity, no surprise, just consideration. The next day, he moved me from the sink to the line. Just breakfast shift. Eggs and toast, pancakes, simple things. But the first time a customer smiled at their plate because of something I made, a new hunger ignited inside me. Not for food, for possibility. A night, after Lena fell asleep, I watched free culinary tutorials online. I practiced knife cuts with whatever vegetables I could afford. I saved money for one-use professional chef's knife and treated it like treasure. I started bringing home leftover ingredients from the diner, things that would be thrown out anyway. I turned them into soups, stews, little plates that felt like love served in bowls, and Lena grew healthy, bright-eyed, loud laughing, full of life, the opposite of how I had entered the world. When Lena was 2, Sal pulled me aside. "There's a community center 2 blocks down," he said. "They have a night culinary certification program. Cheap, might help you move up." I almost laughed. Cheap still costs money, but I went to the center anyway. I sat in a plastic chair in a room that smelled like cleaning solution and hope. The instructor, a stern woman named Chef Rinaldi, asked everyone why they were there. When it was my turn, I said the truth. "I want to build something no one can take from me." She didn't smile. She just nodded. "Good," she said. "That's the only reason that lasts." Classes were twice a week, 3 hours each. I brought Lena with me sometimes. She sat in the corner with crayons and paper while I learned sauce foundations, sanitation rules, knife technique, plating. I was always the oldest student in the room. Always the only parent. Always the one rushing out early to catch the last bus home. But I was also the most focused, because I knew exactly what was at stake. The day I earned my culinary certification, I held the printed certificate in my hands like it was gold, not because it guaranteed success, but because it proved something I had needed to know. I could start over from nothing, with no family, no safety net, no privilege, and still move forward. The first real opportunity came from a chance encounter. A woman named Maribel visited the diner one morning, well-dressed, sharp eyes, the kind of person who noticed details others ignored. She ordered an omelet. I made it, fluffy, golden, perfect seasoning, simple food, done with care. When she finished, she asked to meet the cook. Sal pointed to me. Maribel smiled. My catering company needs a prep chef, she said. Part-time, paid, interested? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Catering was a different world. Elegant events, linen tablecloths, wine glasses that cost more than my weekly groceries. Guests who spoke casually about vacations in Europe. I moved quietly through kitchens like a ghost in borrowed shoes, watching, learning, absorbing. I learned how presentation changed perception, how ambience influenced taste, how food could tell a story before the first bite, and most importantly, I learned that people would pay good money for an experience they couldn't create themselves. That knowledge settled deep inside me, a seed waiting to take home. Lena drew pictures while I planned, not fantasies, plans, small ones at first, a food stall, a pop-up stand, something low cost, low risk. I tested recipes, timed preparation, calculated ingredient costs down to the cent. One night, Lena held up a drawing, a little food stand with a big sun above it. Stick figure me, stick figure her, she said. Mama cooks for the whole world. I kissed her forehead. Maybe one day, I whispered, but in my mind, I had already begun building it. Some nights, fear returned, the voice of my father. You're a mistake. You'll never survive without me. But then Lena would laugh in her sleep, or hug my neck, or ask for another bite of food I made, and the voice faded, because I was no longer fighting to prove my worth. I was fighting to protect hers. By the time my daughter turned 3, the world no longer felt like a storm. I was barely surviving. It felt like a kitchen in the middle of a dinner rush, chaotic, loud, demanding, but manageable, because I finally knew where every tool belonged. The catering job became my turning point. Maribel's company wasn't glamorous. It was long hours in cramped kitchens, hauling heavy trays, smiling at wealthy guests who never learned my name. But it taught me something invaluable. Food wasn't just nourishment. It was business. It was branding. It was emotion on a plate. I watched how guests reacted when a dish arrived beautifully plated, how their eyes lit up before they even tasted it, how hosts bragged about menus like they were personal achievements, how an experience could be sold, multiplied, and scaled. And while I chopped vegetables and cleaned stations, I quietly built a blueprint in my head. At home. After putting my daughter to bed, I started testing recipes, not extravagant ones, just food that felt comforting, food that told a story. Spiced chicken over saffron rice, citrus glazed vegetables, fresh bread with whipped herb butter, simple flavors elevated by care. I invited one neighbor over as a test, then 2, then 4. I charged nothing at first, just asked for honest feedback. By the 5th dinner, they insisted on paying. By the 10th, they were asking if I could cater their family events. By the 20th, I realized something powerful. People weren't just paying for food, they were paying for how the food made them feel. Warm, special, remembered, loved. I registered a tiny business, a name that felt like rebellion and rebirth. Ember Table. Because embers never truly die. They wait, they glow, they reignite. My first official catering job was a small birthday party in a rented community hall. Plastic tables, folding chairs, a balloon arch leaning slightly to the left. Not glamorous, but real. I cooked for 12 hours straight, packed food into borrowed containers, balanced trays on the bus ride there, served guests with a smile that hid every ounce of fear inside me. At the end of the night, The host pressed an envelope into my hand, payment, plus a tip. I walked home holding that envelope like it contained the future, because it did. Success didn't arrive as a sudden explosion. It arrived as slow, steady sparks, a referral, a repeat client, a wedding, a baby shower, a corporate lunch. Each event grew larger, each menu more ambitious, each paycheck slightly bigger. I reinvested everything, better equipment, a used delivery van, a licensed commercial kitchen rental. At night, I slept 4 hours, worked 16, lived on adrenaline and stubbornness. But my daughter never went without. She had clean clothes, healthy meals, storybooks, a warm bed, a mother who showed up to every per-school event smelling faintly of roasted garlic and victory. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she asked, "Are we rich now?" I laughed. "Not yet." She nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, but we're happy." I paused. "Yes," I said, "we are." And in that moment, I realized wealth wasn't the opposite of poverty. Control was. The real breakthrough came when a food blogger attended one of my events. She posted photos, raved about the flavors, tagged my business. The first time I heard my old surname again, I was slicing lemons in the restaurant kitchen. One of the servers, a college kid named Matteo, leaned through the pass window and said, "Hey, boss. Weird question. Did you grow up in Ridgewood?" I didn't stop cutting. "Yes," I said. He hesitated. "My aunt lives there. She said something about a Bennett daughter coming back to town, living in a big estate, running some fancy restaurant. People are talking." The knife paused mid-slice. Not because I was surprised, because I knew this moment would come eventually. Small towns have long memories and short distances between mouths. By the end of that week, the whispers had reached full volume. A former neighbor booked a table just to see me. An old high school acquaintance sent a hesitant message on social media. A local newspaper emailed asking if I would give an interview about female entrepreneurs returning to Ridgewood. I declined, not out of fear, but because I wasn't ready to let my past step into my present. Yet the truth was unavoidable now. I was back in the same town that had watched me vanish, only this time, I hadn't come home with my head bowed. I came home owning the building. The restaurant's second location opened in Ridgewood. Not intentionally symbolic at first. It was simply the smartest market move. Affluent customers, strong dining culture, good foot traffic. But when I signed the lease, I felt a quiet pulse in my chest. I was planting my flag in soil that once rejected me, not to prove anything, but because I could. On opening day, I stood by the entrance greeting guests. My daughter, now almost 9, helped hand out menus. She wore a little apron with the restaurant logo stitched on the front. She was proud, confident, radiant, everything I had wished for her, everything I had never received. That evening, after the last reservation had left and the chairs were flipped onto tables, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. Then a text arrived. "This is your mother. Please call me." I stared at the words. So small, so late, so heavy. I placed the phone face down on the counter and went upstairs to tuck my daughter into bed. Her room was painted soft yellow, walls covered in drawings, a shelf of books she had devoured faster than I could buy them. "Did we do good today?" she asked sleepily. I brushed hair from her forehead. "We did. Great." She smiled and drifted off. I watched her for a moment longer, then left the room and picked up my phone. I didn't call. I simply opened a blank note and typed one sentence. "You had years." Then I deleted it. Some messages don't need sending. 2 days later, my security system sent an alert. Motion at the front gate of my home. I opened the camera feed. There they were. A man in a worn gray coat, shoulders stiff, chin lifted to high. A woman beside him, smaller, hands folded tight, eyes scanning the property. My parents, standing outside my gate. The same gate my daughter rode her bike past every afternoon. The same gate that protected the life I had built. They didn't press the intercom immediately. They waited. As if expecting the door to open automatically. For them, old habits die hard. I didn't move for several minutes. I just watched. The man paced. The woman wiped her eyes. The house behind them remained still and silent. Finally, the intercom chimed. My security guard's voice came through my office speaker. "There's an older couple here. They claim to be your parents. Do you want them admitted?" I looked out my office window at the backyard, my daughter chasing a butterfly, her laughter floating upward. Then I looked back at the screen. The people who had once held my entire world in their hands now waited outside mine. I took a slow breath. Tell them, I said, that I'll come down when I'm ready. I made tea, not because I needed it, because ritual keeps the heart steady. I walked to my bedroom, changed into a simple black dress, not business attire, not casual, something in between, armor made of cloth. Then I walked downstairs, step by step, slow, unhurried, because for the first time in my life, I controlled the timing of this meeting, not them. When I reached the gate, they straightened like soldiers called to attention. My father tried to smile. It looked painful. My mother's eyes filled immediately. Neither spoke at first. They didn't know what to say. I did. You're standing on private property, I said calmly. Why are you here? The directness threw them off. My father cleared his throat. We heard you were back in town, he said. We wanted to see you, to talk. I studied them, aged, smaller, stripped of the power they once wielded, and yet still expecting something, access, forgiveness, support. The past returning to collect interest. I'm listening, I said, but I didn't open the gate. They stood outside the iron gate, like strangers asking for directions, not parents, not family, strangers with familiar faces. My father's hands were clasped behind his back, posture rigid, as if discipline alone could disguise desperation. My mother's fingers twisted together, knuckles pale, eyes shining with a fear she had never shown when I needed her most. The wind lifted a few strands of her graying hair. She didn't brush them away. For the first time in my life, I saw them not as towering figures of authority, but as two fragile people trying not to fall apart. And still, I felt nothing resembling duty. I'm listening, I repeated, my voice carried through the intercom speaker, calm and steady, but I didn't press the button to open the gate. My father cleared his throat. We wanted to see you. We heard you were doing well. His words were careful, measured, tested. I didn't respond. Silence is powerful when you've spent years being afraid of it. My mother swallowed hard. You look healthy, she said. Your daughter too. She's beautiful. I glanced over my shoulder. My child was still in the garden, kneeling beside a flower bed, humming to herself as she dug in the soil with a tiny plastic shovel, unaware that the people who once rejected her existence were now staring at her like a miracle they wanted access to. She is, I said simply. My father shifted his weight. I lost the company, he said abruptly. There it was, not apology, not accountability, just the revelation he believed mattered most. The contracts collapsed. The loans were called. We're selling the house, the same one where I had been told to pack my life into 2 suitcases. I felt a flicker of memory. My childhood bedroom, the chandelier over the dinner table, the television laugh track while I left. But the memory passed like a cloud. No storm followed. My mother finally spoke again. We made mistakes, she whispered. We were afraid. We didn't know how to fix things. I almost laughed. They didn't know how to fix things? I had rebuilt my life from a mattress, on the floor and a diner sink. I had learned how to fix everything. Hunger, poverty, betrayal, loneliness, fear. But I didn't say any of that, because explanations are gifts, and I was no longer giving gifts to people who had emptied me once already. My father's voice hardened slightly, frustration bleeding through the cracks. We're your parents, he said. We came to talk about family. I stepped closer to the gate, close enough that they could see my expression clearly, close enough that they could no longer pretend I was a child. They could command. You stopped being my parents the night you threw me out, I said. Everything after that has been my life, not yours. My mother's breath hitched, my father's jaw clenched, but neither interrupted. They were finally listening. I built this, I said, gesturing to the house, the garden, the laughter behind me. Not because of you, in spite of you. My daughter has never gone hungry, never been unwanted, never been told she is a mistake. I made sure of that. My mother's tears fell freely now. My father looked away. We just wanted to see you, he said more quietly. To know you're okay. The lie was gentle this time, softer, but still a lie, because if they only wanted to see me, they would have come years ago, before the wealth, before the success. before the whispers of my return. They came now because need had finally bitten them, and they hoped blood would be currency. I rested my hand on the gate, cold metal under my palm, a barrier, a boundary, a choice. I am okay, I said, but I don't owe you anything beyond that answer. My mother stepped forward slightly. Could we at least meet your daughter? She asked. Just once? For a brief moment, the old instinct surfaced, the longing for a mother who chose me. But I had already lived the answer to that longing. She had made her choice years ago, and I had made mine since. My daughter doesn't need grandparents who appear only when it benefits them, I said. She has people who love her without conditions. I will not introduce confusion where she has stability. My mother closed her eyes. My father's shoulders sagged. They looked smaller than ever, not powerful, not terrifying, just human. Too late. I wish you peace, I said, but you won't find it here. Then I pressed the button to close the intercom channel. Their voices cut off, their presence reduced to a silent image on the security screen. Two figures behind a gate, on the wrong side of the life they once discarded. I turned away, walked back toward the house, toward my daughter, toward dinner, toward laughter, toward a future that didn't require ghosts. Behind me, the gate remained closed, and for the first time since the night I left their house, I felt truly free. The car was still at the gate when the security guard called to confirm they had left. I didn't rush to look. I didn't need to. Some endings don't require witnesses. Inside the house, the scent of roasted vegetables and warm bread drifted from the kitchen. My daughter's laughter bounced down the hallway as she chased the dog Russell had insisted we adopt last spring. Life moved forward without hesitation, without pause, without acknowledging the ghosts at the gate. That was the part I once couldn't imagine. That the world would continue after the pain, that happiness could exist without apology. Later that evening, after the dishes were washed and the children were tucked into bed, Russell found me on the back patio. I was sitting in a wicker chair, barefoot, wrapped in a soft cardigan, watching the lights along the garden fence glow softly against the dark. He didn't ask questions at first. He just handed me a cup of tea and sat beside me. You're quiet, he said eventually. They came, I answered. He didn't need clarification. I know, he said. Security told me. I stared into the tea. I thought I'd feel something, I admitted. Anger, satisfaction, guilt, relief, something dramatic. And, he asked gently. I felt nothing. Russell nodded like he understood. Nothing means they don't own space in you anymore. I let the words settle, because he was right. The little girl who once begged for her father's approval had long since grown up and left the building. That night, after Russell went to bed, I opened the small wooden box in my closet. Inside were relics of a life I no longer lived. A photograph of my childhood bedroom, a letter written in a shaky apology, a key to a house I would never enter again, and at the bottom, the hospital bracelet from the day my daughter was born. I picked up the bracelet. The ink had faded slightly, but the numbers were still there, proof that even at my lowest moment, something new had begun. I closed the box, not with bitterness, not with ceremony, just quietly, like closing a chapter in a book I had already finished reading. The next morning, I received a call from a local real estate broker in Ridgewood. He sounded nervous, overly polite. He asked if I might be interested in purchasing another property nearby, a particular house that was about to go into foreclosure. He didn't say the address. He didn't need to. I knew exactly which house it was. The one with the chandelier, the one with the mashed potatoes, the one where I was given an hour to erase myself. I looked out at my garden. My daughter was swinging, legs pumping high, fearless, free. I smiled softly. No, I told him. I'm not interested. There was a pause on the line, then a quiet, understood, and the call ended. I didn't need to buy the past to conquer it. I had already outgrown it. That house was not my origin anymore. My origin was here. In the garden soil under my daughter's nails. In the steady presence of a man who never needed to shout to be heard. In the company I built from nothing. In the silence that no longer frightened me. A week later, my mother sent a letter. No dramatic apology. No demand. just a single page written in careful handwriting. She said she hoped I was well. She said she understood why I made my choice. She said she wished she had been braver. I read the letter once, then placed it back in the envelope and stored it in the same box in the closet, not out of forgiveness, not out of cruelty, just acceptance. Some people are not villains. They are simply weak, and weakness can wound just as deeply as cruelty. Months passed. Seasons changed. My daughter grew taller. My business expanded into 3 states. My life filled with meetings, birthday parties, late-night talks, school projects, warm meals, shared laughter, ordinary joys, and slowly, without noticing, the memory of that dinner table and those mashed potatoes stopped visiting my dreams. One afternoon, while walking through the garden, my daughter looked up at me. "Mom," she asked, "what does our last name mean?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "It means we rise," I said. She nodded, satisfied, and ran ahead, and I realized something simple and final. I was never the mistake. I was the beginning. The first snowfall of winter came quietly, in no dramatic storm. No thunder. Just soft white silence settling over the estate, covering every path, every hedge, every memory of what once was. I stood at the window with a mug of coffee, warming my hands, watching my daughter press her palms against the glass, excited to run outside. Behind me, the house hummed with life. The heater clicked. The kitchen timer chimed. Russell's voice drifted from the hallway as he reminded the kids to put on gloves. A house full of sound, a life full of presence, everything I was once told I would never have. That afternoon, while the children built a lopsided snowman in the yard, I received one final message from Ridgewood. A neighbor I barely remembered sent a polite note saying the old Hall house had officially been auctioned. New owners. Renovations planned. The past physically changing hands. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Some chapters close themselves, others you close deliberately. That evening, after dinner, my daughter climbed into my lap on the couch. "Mom," she said, "tell me the story about when you were little again." She loved hearing about my childhood, not the painful parts, the simpler ones. The time I fell off a bike, the first time I saw the ocean, the day I learned to swim. She didn't know there were stories I would never pass down, stories that ended with a door closing behind a pregnant girl carrying 2 suitcases, stories that didn't deserve inheritance. I told her the ocean story, and she fell asleep, with her head on my shoulder, safe and certain. Later that night, Russell poured 2 glasses of wine. "To another year," he said. I raised my glass. "To building," I answered, because that had always been my real gift, not surviving, not escaping, but creating something better from what tried to break me. Before bed, I walked one last time through the quiet house, past the framed drawing my daughter made of our family, past the bookshelf filled with business awards, past the front door, with its solid locks and warm welcome mat, a door no one crossed without invitation. Not anymore. I turned off the lights, leaving only the soft glow of the hallway lamp, and as I climbed into bed, I realized something that settled deep and final in my chest. I had won without fighting. I had healed without forgetting. I had risen without becoming. What hurt me? Some people spend their lives trying to prove their worth to those who never saw it. I did something else. I built a world where their blindness didn't matter, where my daughter would never wonder if she was loved, where silence wasn't fear, where home wasn't conditional. Outside, snow continued to fall, quiet, soft, covering everything that no longer needed to be seen, and inside, in a house built by my own hands and will, I slept in peace, not a mistake, not an afterthought, not a discarded child, but the author of a life entirely my own.